Has NIL killed the Cinderella?
NIL is partially to blame, but I think saying that NIL is solely to blame for the lack of Cinderellas is just a lazy take in general this season. NIL was initially introduced into collegiate sports in the summer of 2021, and obviously it's grown and it's gotten bigger since. But we've seen underdogs like St. Peter's, or Cinderellas, like we like to call them, like St. Peter's, go to the Sweet 16 since then. We've seen a bunch of really cool runs, like Miami, 10-seeded Miami versus an 11-seeded Iowa State in 2022 as well. In 2023, we saw the first ever 16 seed beat a 1 seed. So was NIL to blame in 2023 when 16 seeds were being 1 seeds? I don't think that's the case. I think the fact that it was a little bit chalky this year could be a little bit to blame with NIL, but I don't think it's solely the reason. If you just look at the stats, not every single year is there going to be a really bad team beating a really good team. Like if you look at that 16 versus 1 seeded matchup specifically in FDU versus Purdue that one year where FDU won, the spread was 21.5 points. And if you look at a lot of these like 1 and 2 seeded matchups versus 15 and 16 seeds, or even 3-14 seeds, the spread, Vegas has the spread at like 15 plus, anywhere from, I think the spread of Florida's first game was 35 plus or 31.5 points. That is absurd, and it's not always going to get covered, and it's not always going to, the underdog in those situations aren't always going to win. Sure, does NIL play a part in the fact that these teams have gotten so good? Yes, but like the fact that there have been underdogs before and since NIL has started since 2021 means that it's not solely to blame. And I think that it's just a little bit of a lazy take to say, oh, this year there's no Cinderellas. We still have a 10 seed, and we could have had a Colorado State team that came a buzzer beater. We'll talk about it a little bit more, and I have a little bit of a rant on this, but we came very close to just seeing another 12 seed do it. Obviously, the big thing is that all the 1 to 4 seeds were able to advance to the round of 32 and eventually to the round, most of them to the Sweet 16. But I don't think that you can put too much stock in, and I don't think NIL is completely to blame. So I just want to shoot that down a little bit, because I think it's being overblown a little bit.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think it just feels lazy. There's a lot going on right now, but here I'm going to push back too on some of the people saying that NIL is to blame. Well, who cares if that is even the case, right? Because there's no way that we're going back, and there's no way that these students, these athletes should not be getting paid for their labor. Like, they should be earning what they're worth, and they should be able to go wherever they want to go, because that's exactly what the coaches have been able to do. There's been this unfair game for a very, very long time, and unfortunately, these students, maybe not so much unfortunately, but unfortunately for the spirit of the game, or whatever you want to put that in quotes or whatever, these students and their athleticism and their, how much they bring to the universities is worth more than an education. So they have all of these rights to be able to go wherever they want. They're worth pretty much more than some of the coaches are worth. And they shouldn't have to abide by any sort of restrictions or rules that we wouldn't see in almost borderline pro sports. So it's like, even if this was the case, then it's like, what does it matter? Because there's no way that we're going to go back to the old model just to have the underdogs make runs in the tournament. And like you said, it's not stopping it regardless. Like, we've seen it over the last 3 years. We just haven't seen it this year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we're not like saying that it hasn't been a chalky year. Obviously, it has been almost completely, like, not completely chalk, but there have been a lot of favorites that have won those games. But like, if you look at it in the long run, like, a true college basketball fan, or like even just the general fans, are going to really appreciate the way that this tournament is shaped out, because when there's only 4 games, or there's only 2 games on during this Elite Eight, or the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight this weekend, you're going to be appreciative of the fact that you're not going to see, and like an FDU obviously lost in the round of 32, but even a St. Peter's losing in the Sweet 16 and getting blown out, or any of these teams that, like, NC State had that beautiful run last year where they made it to the Final Four. They scored 50 points in their Final Four game, and it was a very unentertaining game. Like, the fact that the quality of play is going to be so much higher this year, I think bodes well for just the overall quality that we're going to be watching on the basketball court this upcoming weekend, and looking into the future. I think that helps a lot with just general viewership. And you look at those runs where, like, you had like a St. Peter's run, or like that where UConn faced San Diego State as a 4-5 seed in 2023, I believe. Right? Like, that was a good tournament where there was a bunch of upsets and a bunch of, like, in general, college basketball fans, like, stop caring at a certain point. Like that San Diego State UConn final was one of the lowest rated finals of all time, and we had a 4 seed versus a 5 seed, and we had upsets all around in that. Like in general, the tournament was highly watched, but like that final did really poorly, and it wasn't a fun game to watch. UConn dominated San Diego State. Like that's not the type of basketball that college basketball fans want to see, and it's unfortunate. Like I probably would have wanted a few more myself, but that it just in general, the quality of play over the next couple of weeks is going to be really, really good. And I think a lot of people are going to be really appreciative.
Yeah, and you mentioned that before the tournament started, so you've been like on that train for a while. With NIL, I think it's presented as the boogeyman of sorts. So for any problem of any of the collegiate sports, it's kind of the issue. This is what's going on. This is the reason why we're not enjoying it as much. I think just over time, people are going to get more used to this, and we're going to realize maybe Cinderellas are going to have to just adjust a little bit and figure it out in a different way. I think they also have the ability to spend money and revive other players' careers. It just depends on some of the programs. Maybe they have to actually do a little bit more before the tournament that can position themselves in a better spot. Like, there's plenty of great mid-major transfers that aren't always going into the Power 5 conferences. So I think that should also be noted. You can spend money just as you might if you're a slightly bigger school, if you're a mid-major. Like, just use those resources properly. One thing that go.
And one last thing I wanted to say about this was just the fact that we did come close to seeing like a lot of upsets in the round of 64, even like maybe not a lot, but Robert Morris gave Alabama the game of their life. They took them almost all the way to the wire. Yale gave Texas A&M a really good game. And like UNC Wilmington almost beat like Texas Tech. Obviously, the final score wasn't as indicative of it, but like they came really close to giving like there was almost a 14-3 like upset as well. So I think that just in general, it was a little bit overblown. If we see like any of those matchups happen, if Robert Morris beats Alabama, I think the narrative is a little bit more dialed back. So
also the Cinderellas have been on like boost mode like in the recent years because there's no reason that a 15 seed should make it to the Sweet 16 in 3 out of 4 years. That went like when we were growing up watching it, like that didn't happen. It was Florida Gulf Coast, and then maybe there was like one other one during that time, but they were really like very, very rare, and they almost never happened. And then we saw a 16 seed still go down. I get it; it's not all just in that era for the NIL. I believe it's kind of like bleeding into it, but still, like the Cinderellas, sometimes you just get a year that just brings down the percentages a little bit. When you read the percentages on the seed facts and everything like that, sometimes you need a year that brings it back. And this has just been that year. Also, I hate how we went into this tournament knowing that it was slightly top heavy. We knew those number 1 seeds were really, really good. And we thought, well, St. John's still went down, by the way, but we thought that the number 2 seeds were also pretty darn good as well. And then we're shocked when it's, all the top 4 seeds in each region were able to make it except for St. John's, right? So
yeah. And like again, like just harping on that just a little bit more. Over the last 6 years, this is only the 3rd lowest like average like seeding of the final 16 teams. So in 2019, a non-NIL year was what like the lowest over the last 6 years. So I just think it's a little bit overblown, just a little bit lazy to just blame it like solely or the majority of it on NIL.